For most of history, we've been taught the same lesson. Empires fall because of wars, because of invasions, because enemies become stronger. But the more I studied history, the more I realized something uncomfortable. Most empires were already dying, long before the enemy arrived. They didn't collapse on the battlefield. They collapsed in the treasury, the illusion of power. From the outside, empires always look strong. Massive armies, grand palaces, gold-covered crowns, Rome, Spain, France. They all looked unstoppable at their peak. But power is deceptive. An empire can look powerful while quietly running out of money. And when the treasury begins to empty, everything else is just decoration. Why money comes before armies? Before an empire can raise an army, it has to pay one. Soldiers need salaries, weapons need production, wars need supplies, roads, ships, and food. All of that costs money. Ancient Rome understood this early. Its real strength wasn't just its legions. It was its ability to collect taxes across a massive territory. Land taxes, trade taxes, customs duties. Roman roads weren't just military tools. They were financial systems built in stone. As long as money flowed into Rome, the empire survived. But once that flow weakened, the cracks began to appear. The silent collapse of trust. When treasuries shrink, rulers panic. They raise taxes, they borrow more, they reduce the value of money. Rome diluted its silver coins. Spain flooded Europe with silver. France borrowed endlessly to fund wars it couldn't afford. On paper, the state still existed. Armies still marched, flags still flew. But something invisible was breaking. Trust. When people lose faith in money, they lose faith in the system behind it. Prices rise, savings disappear. The poor suffer first, but eventually, everyone feels it. No army can restore economic trust once it's gone. Armies without money don't fight, they break. History shows this again and again. Unpaid soldiers revolt, morale collapses, loyalty fades. Rome faced internal rebellions, not because its enemies were always stronger, but because it could no longer afford stability. Spain won battles but lost its economy. France collapsed financially before it collapsed politically. When money runs out, power becomes hollow. An empire may still have soldiers, but it no longer has control. The moment empires truly fall. Empires don't usually fall in a single moment. They decay. The treasury empties slowly. Debt grows quietly. Inflation creeps in silently. By the time people notice, it's already too late. The enemy doesn't destroy the empire. The empire collapses under its own weight. History doesn't remember the budget deficits. It remembers the wars. But the truth is simple. Wars end empires publicly. Empty treasuries destroy them privately. The lesson history keeps repeating. Every empire believed it was different. Rome thought it was eternal. Spain believed its silver would last forever. France assumed prestige could replace solvency. They were all wrong. Power does not come from armies. Armies only consume power. Real power comes from wealth, from systems that produce, manage, and protect it. And the moment an empire can no longer afford itself, collapse is no longer a possibility. It's inevitable. There's one part of this story that history rarely talks about. What happens after the treasury is empty? Because an empty treasury doesn't just weaken an empire, it changes how it behaves. Desperation changes empires. When money runs low, empires stop thinking long-term. They stop building, they stop investing, they stop caring about tomorrow. Instead, they focus on survival. Taxes increase overnight. Resources are squeezed harder. The population is asked to sacrifice them again and again. At first, people comply. They believe it's temporary, but it never is. Desperation turns rulers inward, and inward-looking empires don't last. The turning point no one sees. There's always a moment, quiet, almost invisible, when an empire crosses a line. It's the moment when maintaining power becomes more expensive than the power itself is worth. That's when leaders stop fixing problems and start hiding them. Budgets are manipulated, debts are rolled over. Numbers are delayed, disguised, or denied. From the outside, the empire still looks strong. From the inside, it's already hollow. Why enemies don't matter anymore? Here's the irony. Most empires don't fall because their enemies suddenly become stronger. They fall because they can no longer afford to respond. An invasion that once would have been stopped now feels overwhelming. Not because the army is weak, but because the system behind it is exhausted. At that stage, even small shocks become fatal. A bad harvest, a trade disruption, a short war, things every strong empire should survive. But empty treasuries turn normal crises into collapse. The final illusion. At the very end, empires cling to symbols, more flags, more ceremonies, more speeches about greatness. But symbols don't pay soldiers. They don't fix inflation. They don't refill treasuries. History shows this pattern again and again. The louder the display of power, the quieter the collapse underneath. Why this story still matters? I used to think this was just ancient history, something distant, something finished. But the more I look at the modern world, the harder it is to ignore the pattern. Empires change names, currencies change forms, technology evolves, but the rules stay the same. Power still depends on wealth, armies still depend on treasuries, and systems still collapse when they can no longer afford themselves. History doesn't repeat itself exactly, but it rhymes. The last line, history never writes. History books usually end with battles, with invasions, with dates and fallen capitals. But if history were honest, most stories would end with a simpler sentence. The money ran out, and when it did, everything else followed.